What is up? We have got a Raptor. This is a 2018 Hustler Raptor, 42-inch cut. We are going to install a bagger on this. That's what we got right here. So here we've got all the parts laid out. We've got the chute, we've got the lid for on top, we've got the brackets to hold the bags on the back. We've also got a mount and some weights to go on the front. You've got the bags themselves, and then we have got some blades. So the deal with the blades is depending on the size of your mower. The instructions call out 42 inch, of course it's labeled right here. This one's labeled for the 52, but if you have the 36, it also uses this blade. Step one is to just go ahead and get this thing lifted up and put that 42-inch blade on the right side here. So that is going to be the chute side. Now my mower has a mulch kit installed, so I am going to have to remove this cover and of course that right side blade. I've actually used my lift to lift the front of this up, chalk the back wheels here, make sure the thing's not going to roll backwards on me, and do this with a jack and jack stand, same thing. Now we've just got to remove this blade on the right side, same side as the chute. Now we're going to put the new one on. I'm going to run it up there with my impact and then I'll come back and torque it to the correct specs afterwards. Going to lightly hit that, and then I'll come back with a torque wrench and torque it down. In the instructions, it shows torque the blade bolt to 48 foot-pounds. Now the next step is to mount these brackets for the weights on the front. See, it's got a hole up top, it's got a hole right there. So how this works is these fit up inside there. And they set in there just like that. So they tuck underneath this spot for the bolt head to stick through there. And there's already a hole in the frame to run a bolt in. Do the same thing on both sides. Now the kit comes with some hardware. It's not really labeled that great. But if you look at the pictures, you can kind of decipher which one needs to go where. So we've got our bolt and our nut to attach this front frame. These are 9/16. The next step is to put the weight bar across the front, and that's why they don't want you tightening these, so you can make sure your holes all line up. These bolts are actually, or the nuts are 1/2 inch. So now we can go through, tighten our two bolts for our arms, tighten the two nuts that hold the weight plate on the front. Now that our front mount is on and tightened up, we can put our weights in. And then we've got the mount on the front that holds these things in. Goes in just like that. Then you can snug it down, hold those things in. Our next step is to take these brackets and get them bolted on. Now, there is a left and a right. Where it's bent here needs to go out. So that one's gonna go on this side. Now, the instructions actually say to take the fenders off. I'm gonna try to do it without taking those off. And what we need to do, flip our seat forward. And that bracket is gonna go right down here. So right down here, we can see this hole. This is what needs to line up with the slot in our bracket. So, we'll feed this down, and it sets on there just like that. Bolt comes up from the bottom, nut goes on the top. Now, before we tighten this up, I want to make sure that it lines up here. Now we just have to do the same thing for the bracket on that side. Now the best way I found to tighten this is with the ratcheting wrench. You can see I was actually able to just hit it right down here onto the nut. Now the starter is here, so watch out for that hot wire. You don't want to ground that thing out with your wrench. Now we've got the bracket goes onto the back of the mower. Now, since I've got the tall engine guard, that has to come off. So we've got 2 bolts here, 2 bolts here. That thing should come off of there. Now this bracket goes on here, just like that. You come up top, snaps down on there, then you put the 2 bolts on each side that held that engine cover on. The holes line up that we're holding that engine cover on. We'll just get our bolts back in here, get this thing bolted on. Now, same thing as we did on the front, we don't want to tighten this down yet. Now we need to take both tie rods and put our locking nut on them. And when we put the locking nut on the tie rod, we need to screw it down here when we have 1 inch from the back of the nut to the end of the tie rod. So we're going to do the same thing on this one. Now we're taking our tie rod with our nut on it, and we're feeding it into the hole. Make sure you catch that bracket that we put on there. Now when we feed this through, we want to make sure that we don't pinch this line or damage this line in any way, so you got to watch that. Now that we've got the side with the nut secured into the bracket, we can bring this piece up, slide it into that slot, put our pin in here. Now we're just repeating the process on the left side. Now that we've got our 2 tie rods on, we can go ahead and come back and tighten our 4 bolts holding it on. Now the kit does come with some zip ties to put that line up out of the way. On this side, we're clearing, there's no issue. But this side, it's actually rubbing on that bolt. So what I'm gonna do is just zip tie it back here out of the way. Now we've got to attach this bracket right on there like so. It's got 4 bolts. Now if you notice, there's a washer and a nut on all 4 of these. Now the lid's ready to go on. It sits on there, and then these pins go through and hold it on. So the lid is on now. Pins run through here. Hold it on both sides. Now we've got this bungee for the lid that we need to attach. So we'll run this through here. So now that strap is attached. Now we're going to start putting the chute on. Now there are 2 tabs already in the deck that we need to bend back. One is going to be right here. The other is going to be right here. Well, let's get a hammer and a screwdriver and bend those in. Basically, we just need to make enough room for our hooks to go into these locations. So now we're ready to start putting our chute on. Now, some of the mowers have a guard that runs along the bottom of the deck. This one does not. If yours has the guard running along the bottom, then you will remove this piece here. Just take these 3 bolts, remove this bottom guard. Now, I did this, got both straps connected, did it without that chute cover. You could do it with it on. I'm gonna have to come back now and put it on top. Got our chute cover back on. Once again, you'll probably do that with this already on. You just lift it up out of the way. One thing you do want to make sure is that this tab sticks out past this metal bracket. If it doesn't, it's not slid in there far enough. Now we're ready to put our next piece of tubing in. One end goes up into the lid. The other piece is just going to connect right on here. Got a strap to hold it on. We've got our strap here, runs up into the lid. Now we're ready to put our bags in. So this will just hinge up. And we've got our hooks for our bags. Final thing, put our strap up onto our lid. Now we're ready to go mow.